Pastor, theologian, scholar, and regular Good Catholic contributor, Father Jeffrey Kirby, joins Good Catholic's Rachel Shrader on the Truth Be Bold podcast, a fearless, down-to-earth weekly discussion on the topics at the forefront of our Catholic life today.
Greetings, friends. Welcome to the podcast, Truth Be Bold. I'm Father Jeff Kirby.
I'm Rachel Shrader.
And this is the podcast that dives right in. We hold no punches. We want to make sure we're addressing real issues that each of us face in the midst of a fallen world. It's not easy being a Christian in a secular age, trying to be a faithful disciple in the 21st century. The task is before us, and we're going to do it together. We're trying to figure it out, talk about it, present the wisdom of the church, divine wisdom from the gospel, so that we know what we're supposed to do, what we're called to do, and again, ask for the grace in order to do it faithfully. So thank you for joining us. Today we're going to talk about, I guess we're always going for the deep conversations, aren't we?
What people want to know about,
exactly.
You know?
So
yeah, exactly. That's what we do here.
Exactly. Bring it. We're going to talk about cohabitation, and this is widespread. And in fact, it's very unsettling.
Sadly, so much among Catholics as well.
Yes. Now I realize that some might say, wait, cohabitation, what's going on? It's when two unmarried people are living together. So we can say when they're pretending to be married, right? So cohabitation is actually a very serious sin, but you wouldn't guess that because of how widespread it's become and how normalized it's become. Just a few years ago, I remember being invited to the apartment of a young couple. I showed up, and I assumed that they were married because they registered at the parish and so on. And I went to their apartment and realized that they were not married. They were cohabitating, and they asked me to bless their apartment. And I had to have that very difficult pastoral conversation that I can't bless your apartment because God cannot bless sin. And they're like, what? I mean, they had no idea. I mean, that's where we are.
Yeah, well, people have no idea. I remember a situation about 10 plus years ago when a friend of mine was getting married, and she and her fiance were very faithful Catholics. They understood the church's teaching and were chaste and everything. But they went to some kind of marriage prep retreat or something like that, led by a couple. And one of the questions posed to the various couples at this retreat was, well, what was one of the big milestones in your relationship? And so many of the couples said, when we moved in together. And the couple leading the retreat just said, well, okay, let's talk about this.
Well, I'm glad to hear that was the reaction of the facilitator.
Correct,
because
yeah.
I will tell you that I have heard of engagement programs where, it was a retreat, so it was overnight. And most of the people who were attending were in the same hotel room and with one king bed. So they're going to an engagement program of the Catholic Church, and they're literally cohabitating in the very hotel where this program is being run.
It's not funny, but...
And in that case, the leadership didn't do anything about it.
Oh, my gosh.
So I'm glad, at least in this case, the facilitator had the right response of, no, we need to address this. And I just think a lot of times, because it's become so normalized, a lot of times people just aren't aware, especially young Christians, maybe those who have not been well-trained or have lived as broadly as they could have been or should have been in the faith. So sometimes they just don't know. This young couple had no idea. They were shocked. They were embarrassed. They were frustrated and so on. As I was trying to talk with them and explain, no, as unmarried people, especially in a romantic relationship, you should not be living together. Yeah. And of course, that eventually led to them, unfortunately, leaving the parish and I fear leaving the practice of the faith because they just couldn't accept that. That's weird. Why would the church say that? Don't judge me. It's like, we're not judging you. I mean, we all are under the same yoke.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean, we are seeking all to be faithful disciples. Like,
right.
Judgment is upon us all if we want to be honest, right? So we're going to talk about cohabitation. So first, again, just to clarify, cohabitation, why is it a moral evil? Is the capacity to live together as man and woman in a romantic relationship is the unique privilege of nuptial friendship. Now, we have to go back a step and remind ourselves that the married life, the sacrament of holy matrimony, is there for unitive and procreative reasons. So a man and a woman can be friends. Nuptial friendship is unique because that's the friendship from which children come, right? And again, even as we start to describe this, we can sound like dinosaurs, right? You know, because like, well, no, like kids come from all over the place and from all kinds of different relationships, and not just from married people.
Yeah.
Okay, those are more problems.
Yeah,
You know,
creates problems.
this is why this becomes very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
But to help us understand as Christians is that the nuptial friendship, so those who are called to the sacrament of holy matrimony, have exchanged vows before God, been called by God to be with one another, that is the unique friendship from which children come. All right. And because of that, there are privileges to that way of life, such as they live together. They are in the same bed together. They have sexual relations together. The two are mutually called to serve, love, and honor one another for the duration of their lives. And so they raise their children together. They allow their children to flourish and become adults. They assist as grandparents in the raising of their grandchildren, and so on. This is a beautiful vocation where one leads to the other. So we live in a interesting age, a promiscuous age. Children are always blessings, no matter how they come to us. But we know that there is an order given to us by God so that the best good can be given to the child: a mother, a father, a stable marriage, a family, siblings, and so on, right?
Absolutely.
When we do this, there's peace. When we do this, humanity flourishes. When we keep thinking we know better, we have misery, frustration, we have greater despair, we see suffering, and so on. All right. So with that understanding, cohabitation, that's when two unmarried people say, we are going to steal the privilege of those called to married life, and we are going to live that for ourselves. And I use this language. I'm using charged language on purpose because we need to get some people's attention. Right?
Yes.
You know, it's like to live together in a romantic relationship is the privilege of the married life. So again, if two unmarried people take it, they're taking a privilege that does not belong to those who are dating or those who are in courtship. That's not their privilege yet. And so we take this so seriously, and living together in a romantic relationship is so much connected to the married life that when two unmarried people cohabitate, it's actually a grave evil. They're actually causing spiritual harm to themselves and to the people that they love. All right, so that's cohabitation. And we've mentioned how it's widespread. And regrettably, it really has just covered our society to the point, Rachel, the story you shared, where this has now become one of the steps to relationships in our society. But we know that we're really kind of serious when we live together. Right? You know, it's like, no, there are still problems. You know, so maybe I'll give a few clarifications as well, things that sometimes come up. Sometimes we have two young Catholics who say, well, we're in a romantic relationship and there are financial problems and financial concerns. So we have to live together, but we're not sleeping together. We're not engaged in any sexual relations. So that's acceptable. No. It's not just about the sexual expression. It's a part of it. But the cohabitation itself is like, that is not your state in life. That is not one of the privileges of where you are right now. If your relationship leads to marriage, that can become eventually a privilege of that vocation. You can share it in the privilege of the married vocation. But even if you're not in sexual relations, like two unmarried people in a romantic relationship should not be living together. Okay. So cohabitation itself, that's not cohabitation synonym for fornication. Fornication is sexual relationships between two unmarried people. No, cohabitation is a sin, a grave sin of itself, even if there's not fornication. That shocks people.
Yeah.
They're like, what? Yes, right? Then the question comes up, well, what if I'm not in a romantic relationship, but I need a roommate, and my roommate is of the opposite gender? Okay. Technically, that would not be cohabitation because there's no romantic relationship. However, that enters into a different sin that's called scandal, right? And this is a whole area of scandal that we've kind of lost in our society today, which means, what is the perspective of those around you? What are you doing in terms of your witness to the Lord Jesus? What are you doing to the moral health of those around you? So, for example, your neighbors will all assume that you're cohabitating. because you're a man and a woman living together. So that is not preferred. And I would say if you have to do that, it's better to have 3 roommates. So it becomes clear that there's not a romantic relationship, and only then under extreme circumstances where it really becomes a financial necessity, not preferred. Not preferred. So,
and can I add in that
please.
Also in these situations, it's just from a practical female perspective, this is just an occasion of sin to me and for the people involved, because we always talk about the fact, it's not romantic, we're fine, yeah, but you're still sharing personal space with the opposite sex. Hopefully you have separate parts of the house and everything, but you're still sharing personal space and still kind of living that personal life that really is better for married couples. Yes. And so I consider it an occasion of sin in terms of just chastity. And we think that it's not romantic, but you never know when it could get that way.
That's a great point.
It's you're still sharing personal space, and that's just a privilege of marriage. That's really not something you should be doing with somebody that you're not married to, whether there's a romantic intention or not.
Yeah, that's a great point, Rachel, because you can ask how much of your heart can you give to another person until it becomes romantic?
Yeah.
And if you're in the same residence, even if you're in separate parts of the house and so on, there's just a lot of sharing, a lot of giving of the heart. And at what point does it become romantic? And I would say definitely the church does not prefer it. And scandal is real. And I don't want to say, well, because isn't technically cohabitation, it's somehow acceptable. No, scandal is as serious as cohabitation. And if it's an absolute necessity, ideally be the same gender, or be at least 3 people, or clearly that this is a residence of people who just happen to be living together or something. So that question comes up every once in a while. And sometimes people just lie. Like, we're not a romantic relationship. Wink, wink, wink. It's like, okay, all right, come on. Also, it has come up recently, and this is interesting, is cohabitation does not simply apply to the young, but it applies to our older Catholics. So to those who maybe have never married, or perhaps are widows or widowers. And sometimes what happens older in age, they say, well, I was married, my spouse died, and I have this significant other now, and they start cohabitating. And they think somehow this is acceptable because they're old. Right? Cohabitation applies to all. There's no kind of end to
age limit.
Exactly. Right? Statute of limitations or something, right? So cohabitation is wrong for any Christian of any age. So there's just some of the things to address in terms of cohabitation. But let's talk about the practicals.
Yes.
Here's one that always rattles the cage, is if we have someone in our families who are cohabitating. So a sibling, an adult child, a parent, we cannot stay overnight in that house. And that really has bothered people when I've shared that counsel, is a place that is actively involved in a state of sin. We cannot accommodate that. We cannot normalize that. We cannot become an accomplice to that.
Right.
So say, for example, if an adult child begins to cohabitate, what are the parents to do? Well, first, share with this adult child that this is not morally good. Ideally, that would happen beforehand, because usually it builds up to it. And so the conversation can begin. And you'd say, well, no, this should not happen, and so on. And said, well, this is my life. I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. So you pray for them, pray for your child, your adult child, pray for the other person involved. You cannot contribute any money to the upkeep of that house. So you can't help with the rent. You can't cover house insurance. You can't cover utilities and so on, The only exception will be a human service. So, for example, if they need food, authentically need food, right? You can provide food. If there's medical need, you can provide financial help for medical care and so on. So human needs we provide. Those are the works of mercy. But you can't support this fake household, right? So you cannot. So no financial contributions, no support, and so on. Someone says, well, can I still get my son a birthday present? Yes, of course. It has nothing to do with the state in which he's living. So yeah, of course you still get a birthday present and so on.
Wait. Let me insert something here. What if it's a birthday present that's like supportive of the house?
Okay, that's a great point. In fact, so I was just going to say, and people ask about Christmas presents. Christmas presents, yes. But to your point, Rachel, you can't say, oh, it's a vacuum cleaner or it's a blender or it's a Keurig and so on. Like, no, anything that's going to support or contribute to the house, great point, cannot be given. We can't stay overnight in the home. People ask, well, can I go to dinner at the home where there's cohabitation? Yes, you can. You can go for dinner, especially family. But it's there. I mean, the Lord ate among those who were sinners and struggling to follow moral truth. So yes, we can go. But we go with a clear understanding that we're going there in order to be a witness, to show love, to keep some type of bridge open where conversation can continue to happen. And then there's all kinds of questions. Rachel, I've had cohabitating couples try to be godparents. Right? It's like, okay, because honestly, it's just not on the radar. So all the questions that are related to that, can they come over and be a part of opening the Christmas presents with younger siblings? Can they, and so on and so on. And I try to say the rule of thumb is they can do whatever a dating couple would normally be permitted to do, and nothing beyond that.
Correct.
We can't pretend that they're somehow more than simply a couple that's dating, right? Because they happen to be cohabitating. Because there is a sense, and watch this, when a couple begins to cohabitate, there's a move within the broader family, and it's amazing to watch this, to begin to treat them as if they're married, to the point where I've heard where nieces and nephews will call a cohabitating person an uncle or aunt because of their uncle. So they will, begin, because it's just natural. They're living together, and there's this understanding just in our human nature. Oh, they must be married, or we begin to treat them as if they are married. It's very peculiar. So. Yeah. But those are some thoughts. Anything you got, Rachel?
Just a few. Just as a closing thought, and maybe this is probably something that'll come up in future episodes, it's just really beautiful the way the church has the way as God really has arranged things in a family for the flourishing of the couple and for the flourishing of children and the flourishing of society. And God does this for a reason. The church doesn't have stupid rules. Like, one of the things I love about the church, like one of the indicators that the church is true, is that she doesn't have rules that don't make sense. The rules are simply the explication or the explanation of things that are already there, the way that God has already set it up. And it's just beautiful. Marriage is a beautiful institution, and the idea of chastity before marriage and the fact that we maintain separate relations before marriage, it just makes it so much more beautiful. The fact that when couples actually make that commitment and make that vow, it's ever so much infinitely more meaningful, when they've been keeping chastity beforehand. And so just from a broader perspective, it's incredible, the beauty of it when we actually see it. So
yes, and it works. When we just do what God asks, there's holiness, peace, there's joy. Well, I hope that our conversation today has been helpful to you. I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining. Please join us next time.
God bless you.